Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with another new product announcement video for the various new 1/16 scale AFV detail components. All of these components are designed and produced by EastCoastArmory.com, and the links to where these components can be purchased are found in the video description listed below. In this video, I'm going to be going over and showing several of these new detail parts, as well as also revisiting some older classic parts that are 3D printed. But either way, there's some really new components that have been added to the catalog, and they will be discussed in this video. So stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming for the various 1/16 scale builds that these parts are definitely going to be or can be used on. Kicking the video off takes us to the set that we have here. This here is the new ECA 3D printed M1 Abrams family shackle set. This set was a very new addition to the catalog. In fact, it didn't exist if it wasn't for a viewer out there that requested me to do the design work for it. As I often mention in these videos, I frequently take on design work, so if you are out there in YouTube land and you're interested in a certain detail component for one vehicle or another, and you go to the catalog and you're not seeing what you need, or if it's something that I just don't produce, hit me up via the email address listed below, info@eastcoastarmory.com, and I could look into potentially designing the set and adding it to the ECA catalog. There have been several detail components in both 1/6 and 1/16 that came about in this manner, and again, it doesn't hurt to ask. So if you're out there and you're interested in a certain detail part, hit me up via the email address again, info@eastcoastarmory.com. Back to the set that we have here. These here are the various toe shackles that are found on the M1 Abrams main battle tank family. So we have two patterns, and I've seen examples of both of these shackles used on the same tank. And the set that we have here have both of these shackles represented. So the first one is the largest, and it's this shackle that we have right over here. And note this component here has all the appropriate geometry and detailing for this set, or I should say for the real part. I had some pretty good reference photographs of the real units, so I was able to get as much fittings and as much of the geometry down into the little one as possible. And we also have a separate pin. The pieces are designed so that they are functional, so you just pin the thing together and now the piece can actually pivot. The pin itself is interesting in that not only does it have the correct geometry to it, but you'll see that it has a small tiny little hole printed into this section over here, and if you are so inclined on the real one, this is actually used for a cotter pin, and if you want to get that detailing in your build, you can do that. The hole is present, is printed through and through. With the way these pieces are powder printed, there may be some just powder in that hole over there, but with a small Dremel bit on a pin vise, you can easily clean that out, and with some equally small wire, you can actually bend the shape of the cotter pin, and now you have the full detailing for the part. For the piece, you'll see that there are several included with this set, and there's more than enough to equip one Abrams tank. The other pattern is the U shackle that we have right here. Again, I had some pretty good reference materials, and these U hooks are something that are actually pretty tricky to put together in CAD. I've had about 2 or 3 goes at these so far, and this one here, let's just say I've got a lot better with practice, and this one here I think is so far the best design one I've come up with thus far. So much so that I think I'm just going to scale these up when I need them for my larger builds. But either way, these here are again designed to be fully functional, where the hole is printed hollow, so no drilling needs to be done, not like if it was on resin or any other type of material. And we also have the securing pin right here, and the securing pin has its tab and hole detailing present as well. As for the fit, it is a perfect fit onto the piece. As you can see, it just slides directly into place without any sort of problems. The detail components are intended for use on the Heng Long M1A Abrams tank kit, and here we have one of the Heng Long Abramses in the shop. In fact, this is the same model that was the subject matter of the other new product announcement videos that I did a little while ago, and this one's going through its course of painting and weathering, but of course more on that to come in another video. But since I have it on hand, I might as well show how the parts fit on. So here we have the shackle right here, and this one is intended for, or I should say, it's generally seen on these vehicles in this section right here on this front tow hook. So it just slips into this section right here, and then you would pin it together. The one thing that you will need to do is you will need to drill the hole out larger found on the Heng Long model, as it is smaller compared to the one found on the examples that I was using as research. This is very easily done with a pin vise with a Dremel bit. Just go in here, remove the necessary material, and then the new piece can be pinned in place, and it can actually still be functional and can pivot up and down. You'll notice that the ECA piece slips directly over the Heng Long unit without any sort of problems or hand fitting need to be made in that regard. As for the other hooks, these two can be fitted in these sections if desired, or you can also mount them on the other hooks like the ones that we have here on the bottom, as well as the ones on the back. The ones on the bottom in this example are the ECA bottom plate replacement with the new ones that are integrally printed on. However, the stock ones, you can still use these, but the stock ones are solid plastic, and you will need to drill them out with a pin vise in order to get the pieces to hinge, much along the lines as I mentioned for the one on the top. Same is also true for the units on the rear. However, if with just a little simple hole getting drilled, you will be able to upgrade your Heng Long model with the new toe shackles. Outside of the Heng Long M1 Abrams, the set may also be able to be used on the Tongday M60, as the M60 does feature these type of tow hook shackles mounted on the lower front and lower rear portion of the vehicle's hull. Unfortunately, I have yet to build the Tongday M60 at this time, so I can't say specifically if this set here will work as a drop-in replacement, or if you may have to do some slight modifications to the model. But just throwing that out there, if you have the Tongday M60 and are looking to upgrade the shackles for one reason or another, this set here should be definitely something to consider. Upgrades, here we have a set that I recently released about a year or so ago, but I never had the opportunity to utilize them on a build just yet. But they've been sitting there on the catalog. What we have here is the new HD 3D printed Tiger 1 exhaust puffer cap set. For anyone who's a fan of the channel and who's been a fan of the catalog, you'll know that I've had the puffer caps listed for a very long period of time. In fact, they were some of the first 1/16 scale detail upgrades that I tooled up about 10 years ago at this point, which is funny to say, because to me it doesn't seem like that long ago I started doing 1/16 scale upgrades, but yeah, checking the calendar, it's been about 10 years. Regardless, here we have the newer set. The older sets were made the old-fashioned way and were handmade masters with, rubber molds with cast resting pieces. And those pieces were great for the time, and the molds were basically used until they just burned up. Throughout the production, I originally cast them in resin, then I switched over to a flex type material because of the propensity of these things getting broken, and then eventually when the molds just wore off and burnt up to a crisp, I went ahead and said, you know what? I think it's time to go ahead and design a newer tooling set, and that's what I have here. Compared to the other sets, these ones here are all made out of HD 3D prints, and you can see the units right here on the runner. These components here are very detailed. I had some very good references, and I was able to basically mirror the references perfectly, bringing you the detailed components that we have here on the table. The details feature the hinge work, the stem, the fastener detailing, and the cap itself. As you can also see, there are plenty of puffer caps here on one sprue. Unlike the cast resin sets where I only supplied you enough to assemble one Tiger 1, with this set over here you get to assemble a number of them. Technically 4 if you play your cards right. So we have the puffer caps rendered in 2 configurations. We have them rendered in the open configuration, as well as also the closed configuration. Because of the scale these things are printed in, trying to make them functional was a bit problematic, so I just rendered them with the 2 options. The units also feature their interior detailing, where you can see right there it has the hollow cap section with the mounting rivet right there in the center. So once these things are painted and weathered and secured in place to your Tiger 1 of choice, it is definitely going to polish up and enhance the rear detailing immensely. These sets here are designed for use on basically any of the 1/16 scale Tigers on the market, from the Heng Long to the Tagan to the M1A2. All three of those are basically utilizing the exact same exhaust stack, and that's a topic for those videos. But regardless, the puffer caps are missing, and with the addition of these secured in place, those models will look much more polished compared to just leaving them absent. While on the topic of 1/16 scale detail components for the Tiger 1, brings us to these two items that we have here. Both of these items were something that have been on the catalog now for a little while, and also both of these items were referenced in another model showcase video a little while back. These were originally designed for use on a Tamiya 1/16 scale Tiger 1 that I built for commission, and that model was backdated to Tiger number 100. Of course, that video is found on the channel. You can find the links listed below. But regardless, when these items were designed, of course, they are HE 3D printed with resin, and the ones that we have here are the current production versions. The files and details are exactly the same. The only difference is the material that they are made in. The original ones were made out of this translucent type material, and since then my vendor has switched materials to this brownish resin looking like, cast resin looking like color that we see here. Outside of that, the material is exactly the same with the same level of detail fidelity. So here we have the early track rack, and even though it's in a box shape over here, this is because it's in a sprue. Basically, when you utilize this on the model, you snip these two sections right here. There's a little thin little section. Hopefully that comes out on camera. You take a clean cut snip to that, and then once these pieces are separated from one another, you can then secure your spare track to the front of the vehicle. On the tin work over here, this is again the early, or I should say initial production Tiger 1 rear mud flap, and these versions were not hinged. This was something that would be changed on the production version that came after this unit over here. But regardless, they have the appropriate geometry with the rigidity fins right here on the front. We have the fastener details located right there on the back. And they do have the correct shape to them with the bottom recess, or I should say the bottom edge. These ones are again in a sprue format, so you just snip these sections off, and then you could just drill and mount these to the rear section of your Tiger 1. Takes us to a component that was announced and added to the ECA 1/16 catalog about a year ago, but this is the first time I actually had the opportunity to have a production set in hand. What we see here is the early production US AFV 50 cal travel lock set. This set here is the elevated non-retracting early pattern US 50 cal travel lock set. Specifically, this would be the one found on early production versions of the M4 Sherman tank family. When it comes to these travel locks, there are two patterns that we all know of. The second is the more common one, and that's this unit that we have here. This, by the way, is 1/8 scale. It was accidentally printed in brass, and yes, these are still available. If anyone wants one, hit me up. But regardless, you get an idea on how the piece functions. So this one here is retracting when the unit is not needed. It folds out of the way, nice and tucked away, and then when you need it, you simply lock it in the upright position, and this will allow you to secure the barrel in place. Well, before this design here, we had this design. This one here is elevated, as you can see on this distinctive bracket, and it is non-retracting. The unit that, or I should say the CAD files used to create this unit over here are my 1/6 scale ones, which I believe was a topic of another new product announcement video a little while ago, but regardless, those were the files used to create this set here, and I just shrunk them down to 1/16 scale. Because they are the same CAD files, you have the exact same detail fidelity. So if the camera could zoom in nice and close, you can see it has the elevated bracket mount, as well as the mount for the rabbit ears themselves. Both of them are in scale. And then we have the rabbit ear spring clips. They have their appropriate shape and geometry to them. And you'll also see the rivet detailing that are present where on the real unit, the top bracket and the rabbit ears were sandwiched with the elevator bracket that we have right there, and those details are present on the unit and are integrally printed. These ones here are sold in a set of 5. So with one little set here, you have enough to equip 5 1/16 scale Sherman tanks, or you could just keep them on hand for use of a spare in case a mishap were to happen at any time. Also on the ECA catalog, there are two other options of the travel lock. We have the folding one, which is basically this unit here, and it is pre-assembled, or where it is rendered in the retracted state. It's also HD 3D printed just like this one. And then there's another variant that has it in the deployed state, both of which can be found again on the ECA catalog. And those ones are 1/16. As I mentioned before, this one is slightly larger, being 1/10 or 1/8. Again, these are available. I have a few of them on hand. If you want them, hit me up. Back to the HD counterparts over here. Like I said before, on this one here, you get a pack of 5, and they're ready to go straight out of the box on your build. You just snip them off here with a clean cut snip, and you could secure them to your split ring cupola of choice. Here's another component that's been on the catalog now for about 2.5, maybe 3 years, but here we have it on camera for the first time. This here is the US AFV tow cable set. On ECA, I have several different versions of these units that are available between the actual different styles, as well as also with the different numbers that are supplied in each particular set. What we have here is Style 2, and more specifically, this is the 5-pack Style 2. So here you can see what Style 2 looks like. When it came to these tow cables, there were 2 eye types that I've noticed, and this here is the symmetrical type, is what I refer to it as, where it's basically just a round tube section that goes around, forming the shape of the eye. The other version is similar to this, but it's flatter in its overall appearance on the one side. Both options are available on ECA. As I also referenced before, this one is the 5-pack. So with one set, you have enough components here to assemble 5 tow cables. This includes enough of the tow eyes, as well as also enough of the cables themselves. The steel cable is slightly longer than it needs to be. This is so that the builder can actually fine-tune the length to the length that they need for their particular build. The 5 set contains enough cable for 5 vehicles, and there's also another set that just contains enough to create 1 complete tow cable. So you have 2 eyes and only 1 length of cable. In fact, I have one of the single sets right here on stock, and this is actually about to be packaged and shipped as well. Here's what they look like individually. So here we have the 2-pack, or I should say here we have the amount of parts that create 1 tow cable. It's on a little sprue like this here, and you would get 1 of these cables, which I still need to measure out and then cut the length. But regardless, that's what you get with that. These ones here generally come on a fret that has a runner that has all these components on. However, these parts popped off during shipping. No big deal, you need to clip them off anyway. But here's what the sets do look like. Takes us to a brand new detail component that has been added to the catalog, and it's one that replaces an older piece that's been on the catalog now for about 10 years. And that is the new ECA 1/16 scale HD 3D printed MP65 antenna base set. As I mentioned before, these pieces here were originally tooled up and designed and have been posted on the catalog now since about 2013 or 14 or so. Basically, it was one of the first items I designed up in 1/16 and threw onto the catalog. Since then, a lot of units have been casted out of those molds, and those molds have since worn out and are no longer capable of producing a quality part. So they went ahead and were put out to pasture, and now I have the new set that you see here that has replaced it. The old sets have been retired, they've been scrubbed off the catalog, and these new ones here are going to be the flag bearer from this point onward. The one big difference between the two components is the composition. The original components were cast out of a flexible type rubbery material, and the new ones here are just standard HD 3D print resin. So these ones here are stiff and are non-flexible. However, the original ones weren't that flexible either. Although the resin was semi-flexible, it did have its limitations to it. But regardless, these ones here are superior in every single way, even though they are no longer fully flexible. These sets here are also offered in 2 separate options. We have the 5-pack and the 10-pack. This one here is the 10-pack, obviously, that you can tell. The 5-pack is a little bit more cost-effective and only supplies you with 5 of these units, as opposed to this one where it goes hog wild and gives you 10. So you have plenty for a number of projects. The MP65 were used on a multitude of American armored fighting vehicles from the late World War II timeframe all the way up until the 1970s era. So these things here can be used on many different type of vehicles, from the Pershing to the M4A3 E8 Sherman, all the way up until the M113 and even the M60. So if you have any of those vehicles I just mentioned, chances are you could go ahead and throw one of these antenna bases on them and it'll improve the look. As for the sets themselves, hopefully the camera can get into focus and you can see what they look like. The MP65 is a unique one because it always reminded me of the things that you dip in honey. You usually see them on the covers of like Honey Nut Cheerios and things like that. But anyway, it's definitely ribbed for her pleasure. The piece on the bottom portion would be ceramic on the real unit. The middle section here would be rubber, which was why I used to cast the old ones in the flexible material. And then the top portion where the antenna would plug into would be standard metal. These units here are intended so you don't install them with the antenna in place. Technically you can, but it's going to be a bit on the frail side, and as I always mention, or I often mention in my MP65 videos, generally the MP65, the antenna would be removable, so rendering it in this format here is one that is definitely appropriate and does not harm the accuracy of the build whatsoever. In addition to all of the details I just mentioned, the fastener detailing, which is found on the top portion, it's going to be really tricky to get on camera, but regardless, this entire portion actually threads into the MP65, and that hex nut feature is found on the piece itself. As I mentioned before, these are as detailed as I possibly can make them, and they are far superior in surface detailing compared to the older generation units that these ones did retire. Also, as a quick side note, in addition to the other American vehicles that I mentioned, the MP65 was actually also used by the Bundeswehr, and their vehicles utilize an antenna base very similar to the MP65, only it's slightly changed with a little bit of addition of a rubber cap found here on the top portion of the antenna base. However, if you're working on a Leopard 2, this set here will actually be able to be used. The only caveat is you paint the pieces a little bit differently. On the American MP65, the ceramic insulator is a amber red type coloring, while on the Bundeswehr vehicles, it tends to be a braun violet or a darker drab type coloring. However, the design of the component is identical to the American counterpart. And with that, that wraps up this new product announcement video for the various 1/16 scale ECA detail components. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 1/16 scale and 1/6 scale new product announcement videos like the one that you just watched, or the other type of content being 1/35 scale model showcase videos, 1/16 scale model showcase videos, and my 1/6 scale project update videos when they frequently get posted. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have more photographs of these particular builds that I just referenced, as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that have been seen on the channel in the past. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks again, and I'll be seeing you all again on the next one.